Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Paul Krikorian. Happy to have you all here today. Thank you for being with us in City Hall. 8 days ago, the military forces of Azerbaijan launched an unprovoked, brutal military attack with the full support of the dictator of Turkey against a tiny nation called the Republic of Artsakh. This attack included the full support of Turkey, logistical support, moral support, military support, and it included the infusion of over 1,000 jihadist, mercenary terrorists paid for by Recep Erdogan in order to kill people in this part of the world. So, as an Armenian, this means a lot to me. And it means a lot to Assemblymember Nazarian, who's here. As Armenians, we care very deeply about this part of the world, and we care very deeply about the slaughter of Armenian people. This is a place where my own children were christened in a 1,000-year-old Armenian church, a church which is now subject to being destroyed by Azeri munitions. But I stand here today not as an Armenian. I stand here today with my colleagues as an American elected official. And as you look behind me here, you see my colleagues in public service, American elected officials from both political parties, from every background, officials who don't agree necessarily on a lot of things, but who agree and stand united and stand strong today against Turkish and Azeri aggression against the Armenian people. We demand that our government in Washington engage immediately and aggressively to bring an end to this violence and to hold the Azeri and Turkish governments fully accountable for these crimes. We do so because Americans should never tolerate fascist Turkish expansionism in this part of the world. Americans should never tolerate the spread of jihadism in this part of the world. Americans should never tolerate the use of cluster bombs against civilian targets and other war crimes that carry with them the echoes of the Armenian genocide. Armenians should never tolerate the next genocide of Armenians, which has the potential to happen right now as we stand here. And Americans should never tolerate the use of violence by the Azeri government to crush a people who have declared their independence and fight for their sovereignty just like the patriots who created our country did when we were founded here. So that's why we are here today, and we're here to call our government to act, and Congressman Schiff and others will speak about what our government needs to do. And I can't speak for others, but I hope that in addition to all the things that we ask Congress to do and that we ask our president to do, I hope that Washington, D.C. will follow the lead of the city of Los Angeles and recognize the sovereignty and independence of a free and independent Republic of Artsakh. And so with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker at this press conference, who will be joining us by Zoom, the mayor of the great city of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. Mayor Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Krikorian, and thank you for always being an unwavering voice of truth and justice for Armenians, for Americans, for this world. And thank you to all of my colleagues in elected life who are with us today, unified and united here today. A day of sadness, but a day of solidarity. A day of uncertainty, but also of unity. And a moment when fear fills the air, but peace must fill our hearts, and most importantly, the actions of all of us. For our Armenian brothers and sisters, nothing can truly ease the pain and the worry that you are feeling right now. The echoes of history and the pain of this moment. Lives have been lost to acts of unnecessary violence and unwarranted assaults on innocent families, and an invasion of Artsakh's cities and communities. When you have loved ones who are caught in the crossfire, this isn't something abstract, this isn't history. This is every day and every hour right now. When Armenian family members and friends find themselves facing another round of attacks, no words of reassurance can truly make anything easier. Only actions matter. Only steps towards calm and nonviolence count. And here in Los Angeles, we will use our status as a global crossroads to strengthen the forces of dialogue and engagement and to call for immediate peace now. Do everything we can to encourage a swift end to this conflict. I'm very proud that Los Angeles is home to the largest Armenian population outside of Armenia. Los Angeles is your home, and I share your concerns. I hear you, I see you. More importantly, we hear you and we see you. I condemn the violence visited on the communities of Artsakh. I will always stand firm in the pursuit of safety and security. So right now our mission must be crystal clear. Concrete steps to a ceasefire immediately. And I urge the Trump administration to conduct the sustained and rigorous diplomacy necessary to bring peace to the region now. It must start by forcefully denouncing the aggressive actions by Azerbaijan and demanding that Turkey disengage from this conflict immediately. Because the only path to a sustainable resolution is through de-escalation and through return to negotiation between the parties on the ground. And that same spirit should inform us here in Los Angeles. Many of us are moved, and understandably so, to protest what's taking place in Artsakh. And as your mayor, we will always defend your right to do so peacefully, to demonstrate without fear. And please do so with our tradition of nonviolence and respect. Do our best to ratchet down the tensions and do our part to protect everyone in the midst of a pandemic as well. Every year we've come together to march to remember the 1.5 million human beings of Armenian descent whose lives were stolen in the Armenian genocide. We unite around a clarion call that those who deny the wrongs of history are doomed to repeat them, that no nation should erase the memories of so many souls taken in a dark and vile crime against humanity. That's our responsibility, to speak the truth, learn from our past, and apply it to the present, and we must sustain that mission here today. Not simply to recall facts too often ignored, but to reaffirm our commitment to peace and the preservation of life right now. Our belief in coexistence, our sincere desire to bring an end to violence and to usher in a brighter day for everyone who calls Artsakh home. So our city stands with you. We are determined and united to make sure that we have a brighter, a safer, and a more democratic future for all. Thank you. And with that, let me introduce a dear friend who has been on those marches side by side, who has led, finally, the first passage of a resolution in the United States Congress that recognizes the Armenian genocide, and a champion for Los Angeles, for the Armenian community, and in this world, Congressman Adam Schiff.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And my friend Paul Krikorian, thank you for bringing us all together today. Let me just talk about how this all got started. President Aliyev of Azerbaijan is facing increasing domestic discontent in his country over his corrupt handling of governance in that nation. And like so many despots around the world, his response is not to try to improve the conditions of the people in his country, but rather to provoke war with his neighbor. And that is exactly what he has done, shelling innocent civilians, killing people, and risking a wide regional war. And in this provocation, in this aggression, in this murder, he is being aided and abetted by Erdogan and Turkey. On a bipartisan basis in Congress, Jackie Speer and I have introduced a resolution calling on Azerbaijan to cease its aggression, cease its murder of civilians, demanding the installation of peacefire monitoring equipment along the line of contact, and telling Turkey's Erdogan to back off. to stop recruiting foreign fighters from Syria. We have a strong bipartisan message for Turkey and Erdogan. You're a member of NATO. Start acting like one. And we have a message for Azerbaijan. Cease the hostilities or there will be consequences. It is long past time that we stopped providing military support to Azerbaijan, which it perverts and uses for its aggression against its neighbors. This conflict must cause us to re-examine our relationship with both Azerbaijan and Turkey. If an ally of the United States is recruiting foreign fighters from Syria to encourage further bloodshed and the murder of civilians, what kind of ally are they, NATO or otherwise? And so we must speak in the strongest terms, not only in Congress, but we must demand that of our administration. So I would say to the administration, stop talking in terms of equivalency. Stop merely calling on both sides to stop when one party is the aggressor. Because when you do that, when you give the false impression that both sides are responsible when Azerbaijan and Turkey are the aggressors, you do nothing but encourage the aggression. And so we will fight in Congress to make sure that we do all we can to stop this conflict. But we also have to make sure the American people understand what is at stake. When our Armenian ally and our friends in Artsakh are being murdered, when civilian areas are being targeted by Azeri bombs and artillery, and civilians are being targeted by foreign fighters with the help of Turkey. It threatens all of our freedoms. And so we must speak out. Many of us warned that if we didn't, that we would have a conflagration just like the one we're seeing. A lot of people in our country don't know this region, and they're only learning about it now. Let's make sure that we put an end to this conflict, we put an end to the suffering, and we never give Azerbaijan or Turkey reason to believe that they could commit such acts of violence again with impunity. And now it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague in the Assembly, Adrien Nazarian, a great champion for the Armenian cause.
Thank you, Congressman Schiff, and thank you for being a champion that you have been for almost a quarter of a century in elected office, starting in '96. Very much appreciate all the work that you've done and the value you've placed on human life and dignity. I also wanted to say thank you to all of my colleagues who, on a very quick turnaround from a press advisory on Friday, were able to rearrange their schedules to be here, some of whom were in office along with the Speaker, Mr. Holden, and others who voted to recognize the independence of Artsakh, the Republic of Artsakh, in the State House. Colleagues, I want to talk about two things: federal government's inaction, as well as your role as press. But before I do that, I want to let you know that exactly 100 years ago, 1920, when the Turks had committed the biggest atrocious act in modern current time and the first genocide of the last century, they didn't feel they finished their job. So they came back, and before the Soviet army was able to come down and lay down the Iron Curtain, they took one more run at how much more land they can grab from the indigenous Armenian population, as well as wipe out more Armenians. Amidst those individuals that had to flee, those that were lucky enough to survive were Raya Sogomonian and Yeprem Nazarian, my grandparents, who fled Shushi in 1920. 100 years later, not only have we not learned to address this issue and once and for all put meaning into the words of never again, but we're actually watching on the sidelines, and in many cases, we're not even reporting it. There are 400 plus correspondents in Armenia, almost zero in Azerbaijan, because the country won't allow the press to show up, because they know what they're doing. They know what kind of illegal ammunition they're using. They know the hostilities they're targeting towards civilian populations. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know the coordination that they have had in place with the Republic of Turkey, as well as with the Mujahideen and the ISIS members coming in from Syria and Libya. And Armenia knows this very well as well, because 30 years ago, it was the Mujahideen from Afghanistan that were being shipped to do Azerbaijan's war. Now, it's the ISIS criminals that are coming in. And so, if we really mean what we say by saying never again, this is the time to act. This is when the federal government needs to step up and make itself present in the Republic of Artsakh and make sure that the hostilities end. Turkey move out of Azerbaijan, and for the Azerbaijani government to stop receiving the military aid that was multiplied by 25 times under this administration. These are the changes that need to happen. And what I ask of the press is to do your journalistic due diligence, to not be silenced. If we have 400 correspondents, why are there qualifying words being used? Why are there being words saying escalation of hostilities? By now, over 5,000 people have died in this meaningless battle, all in place to exhaust the Armenian population in the place. That's all this is. Yet we are staying complicit. It is your obligation to make sure that that does not happen. You are an educational force in this, in a world where we're too stuck on 15 seconds of seeing what the next news item is. It's your responsibility to make sure that people understand and put a historical context also. With that, I want to introduce my dear friend and longtime colleague and Speaker of the Assembly, Mr. Anthony Rendon.
Thank you and good morning. It is a privilege to be here among these leaders today, but more than a privilege, it's an obligation. As always, it is our human obligation to stand up against aggression. The violence of the past week is not a solution to differences over one people's desire for autonomy and independence. We know that Armenians in that region have been subjected to horrible atrocities that concluded not a century ago. The Turkish government, which has not fully acknowledged those crimes, has a hand, a huge hand, in the most recent hostilities as well. Also, recently we know peaceful Armenian communities here in California have been subject to harassment and violence, and we cannot accept that in any way. I stand with my colleagues in support of those communities and in support of my friends in the Armenian caucus of the California legislature. In particular, I'd like to thank my good friend and colleague, Adrien Nazarian, who has done so much to raise consciousness around this issue. The California legislature does not focus on foreign policy, but out of conscience, we as Americans, we as Californians, must work to end these hostilities and bring a lasting peace to the Armenian people. It is our duty to demand a stop to this aggression. It is my privilege to make that call on behalf of Californians. It's now my honor to introduce a good friend, LA City Council President Nury Martinez.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Councilman Krikorian, for bringing us together to stand in solidarity with the people of the Republic of Artsakh and the community and the Armenian community. About a week ago, we heard the news that Azerbaijan had begun attacking the Republic of Artsakh and Armenia. Since then, we've seen heartbreaking images of civilians being attacked, villages and roads being bombed, and women and children running to bomb shelters to take cover from the attacks. As a mother, it's been incredibly difficult to see the images of mothers in the Republic of Artsakh and Armenia sending their sons and daughters to the front lines knowing they might not return. In the middle of a global pandemic, the people of Armenia and Artsakh are fighting to protect their people and their land. Their very existence is being threatened where the international community silently stands by. I want the people of Artsakh and Armenia to know that the city of Los Angeles and its leadership are here today to stand with you and to tell you that we see you and we see your pain and we see your struggle and we're advocating for you. We are here to tell the federal government that they must act to resolve this peacefully. Standing on the sidelines and pretending that this is not happening is not policy. Silence will only ensure more people die. We are urging Congress and the White House to stop all military support to Azerbaijan and hold Azerbaijan and Turkey accountable for their actions. The cost of not doing anything is too high. We cannot stand by as civilians are killed and injured and villages are attacked. The city of Los Angeles has always stood up against injustice and oppression, and we're doing so again today. We proudly hold the city's diversity and the people who come from all over the world to live here, including the large Armenian community. The Armenian community in Los Angeles has been an ally and a friend to many communities, including the Latino community. And today we stand in support of our friends and against injustice. Thank you again, Councilman Krikorian, for being the voice of the Armenian community on the City Council and for giving us an opportunity to stand together in solidarity. My thoughts and prayers are with the people of Armenia and Artsakh, and the Armenian community here in Los Angeles, and the Armenians all over the world. All of them have been in agony this past week, worrying about their friends, their families, and their homeland. And Los Angeles stands with you. Thank you very much. Is there any press in Spanish? Spanish media? Buenos días, soy Nuri Martínez, la presidencia del Concilio de Los Ángeles. Recientemente hemos visto imágenes de ataques en contra de la República de Artsakh y hemos visto a mujeres y niños corriendo a los refugios para protegerse en contra de los ataques. Como madre, es muy difícil ver estas imágenes de madres en Artsakh y Armenia mandando a sus hijas y hijos a defender a su pueblo, sabiendo que a lo mejor no van a regresar. Estamos aquí para pedirle al Congreso y a la Casa Blanca que mantengan todo, que apoyen a la comunidad de Armenia y que también no sigan apoyando a Azerbaijan y a los turquíos y estar seguros que también van a tener responsabilidad en contra de los ataques en contra de la República de Artsakh. Estamos orgullosos de la diversidad de nuestra ciudad y de todas las personas del mundo que vienen a vivir en Los Ángeles, incluyendo la comunidad armenia. La comunidad armenia en Los Ángeles ha sido un aliado y amigo con muchos de nosotros y muchas comunidades, pero especialmente en la comunidad latina. Y estamos aquí para apoyar a nuestros amigos y estar en contra de las injusticias y la guerra. Gracias de nuevo al concejal Krikorian por ser la voz de la comunidad armenia en el Concilio de Los Ángeles y por darnos a todos la oportunidad de unirnos para apoyar a la comunidad de Armenia aquí en Los Ángeles. Muchísimas gracias. I almost forgot. I'd like to introduce our City Attorney, Mike Fear.
Thank you, Council President Martinez, and thank you, Councilmember Krikorian, for your leadership. Today, as we awakened in Los Angeles, we were all Armenians. Not only because Los Angeles has such a significant Armenian American population. Today, we are all Armenians because we stand in solidarity with those who are victims of aggression. Today we are all Armenians because we stand together with those who are weeping at the losses of friends and family. Today we are all Armenians because when one member of the international community is victimized by aggression, all of us are victimized by aggression. It is no surprise that these attacks from Azerbaijan with support from Turkey emerged last week, because there are so many crises colliding in the world right now. The aggressors thought that with the world's back turned, with everyone preoccupied, you could get away with it. The aggressors thought that there would be no action, no meaningful intervention, no one to say stop to the aggressors. Unfortunately, those predictions have not been inaccurate, and that is why we stand together today. Last week, the leaders of Armenia pled with our nation's leadership to please intervene to stop the violence. America has been conspicuously on the sidelines, while others have tried to fill the void. Just this morning, there are reports that the government of Iran is trying to broker a peace deal. Where is the United States? Our backs cannot be turned. We are leaders on the world stage. It is time we acted like it. And when there are reports, at least, of the potential use by Turkey of F-16 fighters from our country that we sold to Turkey, we need to be investigating that, and if it's true, that should have severe consequences for our future foreign aid to the government of Turkey. We are all Armenians today. Let's act like it. Let me turn now to a longtime friend, Senator Maria Elena Durazo.
Good morning. Thank you to all of my colleagues, Councilman Krikorian, Mayor Garcetti, and all of my colleagues and sisters and brothers. I stand today before you as the senator representing Little Armenia, Senate District 24, and also stand as vice chair of the California Latino Legislative Caucus. I'm here to say to the Armenian community, we are listening. We hear you. We hear your anger. You have taken to the streets, as you should, the streets of Los Angeles, to make your voices public. Your brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters, are being massacred, and the world is standing by. I'm here to say California is not standing by. California took the step to recognize the independence of Artsakh in 2014 because California stands for justice. Last week, our governor condemned the act of violence along with myself and other colleagues, especially the violence on innocent civilians. It pains me to see such violence taking place in Artsakh. Whether it's in El Salvador or any other part of the world, we stand against that violence. My district is home to the resilient Armenian diaspora with many connections and relationships to this area. I ask for the halting of all violence and hostilities. I call on President Trump and our international community to help stop this aggression and violence. The children and their families who are under attack deserve to live in peace. The children and the families who are under attack are the children and the families of Californians. Thank you very much. Quiero decir nomás por parte del caucus, los legisladores del estado de California, y también como senadora representando a la área de Little Armenia, de la comunidad armenia, que estamos aquí para decir un alto, un paro a la violencia en Artsakh, y que nosotros como californianos hemos tomado esta posición por ya muchos años. Muchas gracias. Let me now introduce City Councilman O'Farrell.
Thank you, Senator Razzo. Since Azerbaijan and Turkey's unprovoked and deadly attacks against the Republic of Artsakh began on September 27th, hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians and military personnel on both sides have been injured or lost their lives. We are calling on our own government and all world leaders to condemn Azerbaijan's ongoing, unprovoked attacks that unfortunately are in keeping with a history of Azeri military strikes in coordination with Turkey. I not only represent Little Armenia on the Los Angeles City Council, I have many friends in the Armenian community, and my heart aches for my friends. I stand in solidarity with Armenian people everywhere and demand that the Trump administration and U.S. Congress, led by Adam Schiff, condemn Azerbaijan unequivocally for its latest aggression, call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and stop all military support and cooperation with Azerbaijan. We are asking members of Congress to support Representative Jackie Spear's resolution and to sign the bipartisan congressional letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo calling for decisive U.S. action to condemn Azerbaijan and call out Turkey, who has sent over 1,000 Syrian and Libyan jihadist terrorist mercenaries into this conflict. We have to do everything in our power to de-escalate the attacks against the Republic of Artsakh by Azerbaijan and with Turkey's direct involvement and move forward with resolve for lasting, peaceful outcome. This ancient bloodlust against the Armenian people that is fomented by Turkey must come to an end once and for all. The refusal by the Turkish government to acknowledge the Armenian genocide has consequences. This is one of them: the perpetuation of hatred and violence against the Armenian people. We stand with Artsakh and the Armenian community. Մենք կանգնանք Արցախի եւ հաջողորդի կողքին. Thank you. And now it gives me a great honor to introduce another ally in this solidarity, and that is Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel.
Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here today. I want to thank my colleagues for organizing this, in particular acknowledge our speaker, Anthony Rendon, and my colleague, Adrien Nazarian. I am privileged to represent a vibrant Armenian-American community in the West San Fernando Valley, and also to be the vice chair of the California Legislative Jewish Caucus. And we stand here today in solidarity with the Armenian community in Los Angeles and around the world at this unprecedented moment in American history. Does not relieve us of our obligation to be good allies and to be good partners and to speak out forcefully in support of our allies and to use our influence to promote our interests and to stand up for human rights and democracy and for the children of Artsakh. I think it tells you everything that you need to know that so much of the leadership of our city and our state and from the federal government are gathered here today speaking with one voice. And our message is very clear, and I will put it a little bit more bluntly than some of my colleagues have. To the Trump administration, to the President, to the Secretary of State, it's time to get off the sidelines. It's time for the United States of America to speak out forcefully against the aggression from Azerbaijan and from Turkey, to speak out in support of our allies in Armenia and Artsakh, and to be clear about where our interests lie. This is obviously a complicated region with a complicated history, and there's a lot that folks may wonder about. But what's not complicated is that women and children and innocent civilians are suffering right now in Artsakh, and that it is the responsibility of the Trump administration to get off the sidelines and exercise American leadership to bring about a peaceful resolution. And so we join today on behalf of the state of California with the Armenian American community in calling for stronger federal action and we urge the federal government to use all diplomatic means at its disposal to stand up for our allies and partners, to speak out for human rights and against violence, and to ask Azerbaijan and Turkey to end their aggression. It's now my privilege to pass it on to a partner of mine in the West San Fernando Valley, Councilmember John Lee.
Thank you, Assemblymember Gabriel, and thank you to my colleague, Councilman Paul Krikorian, for having us all here today. My name is John Lee, Councilman of 12th District here in the City of Los Angeles, and I stand with city, state, and federal legislators behind me in condemning the aggressions by Azerbaijan with the support of Turkey against the Armenian people. What is being played out right now in the South Caucasus is not unlike what happened in Korea, where a regional conflict can be the ground zero for a larger global impact. And we wanted to stand here together today to show our support for the Armenian community, not just here in the city, in the state, the country, but throughout the world, and urge our federal government and the international community to quickly condemn and act swiftly before this conflict becomes even larger. And so at this time, I'd like to invite a fellow Valley colleague, Assemblymember Luz Rivas.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee and Councilmember Krikorian for organizing this, Council President Nuri Martinez for hosting. I'd also like to thank my colleague in the Assembly, Assemblymember Nazarian, the chair of the Legislative Armenian Caucus, for inviting me here today, and also for inviting me to be a member of the Legislative Armenian Caucus. I represent Armenian communities that have made the East San Fernando Valley their home, from Sunland Tahunga to North Hollywood to Sylmar. And that's why I'm here, to stand in support with the Armenian community to condemn the attacks on Artsakh. Protecting democracies is something that the United States must do as a global superpower. It's important that we intervene today and not wait any longer. The Armenian community has stood up, and we must stand with them today. And that's why I'm proud to join my colleagues in condemning these attacks that have attacked innocent civilians, children, families that have been attacked. So thank you so much. And next, I'd like to introduce my colleague from the San Fernando Valley, Councilmember Monica Rodriguez.
Good morning, Pari Luis. I stand here today with my colleagues to speak out against the atrocities that are occurring right now in the Republic of Artsakh. We are again finding ourselves to be the voice of the voiceless. For the Armenian community, this tragedy is not one forgotten. It's one being relived. And I'm so proud to join my colleagues from the federal government, in the state legislature, and here in Los Angeles in the halls of city government, that we will unite to say stop the aggression in Artsakh, that the Armenian community is not deserving of these atrocities, and that we must rise up and collectively use our voices to stop these activities from occurring further. It's unfortunate that in the midst of a global pandemic, we are finding members of our community worldwide struggling to have the kind of peace that they are deserving of. In my own community, in the 7th District, I am grateful for the friendships and the collaborations of members of our community, Armenian community, that have called the Northeast San Fernando Valley home. And it is distressing that members of my own community who were in Armenia have now been called to the front lines. My dear friend and constituent, her husband, David Karoglian, is now serving on the front lines. Make no mistake that the actions that are occurring in Artsakh are representative of the knee on the neck of humanity. And it is our collective responsibility to stand up and say no more. And so I join my colleagues asking everyone in Los Angeles and across our nation to call on our federal government to ask for ceasefire and seek peace in this region. I also want to invite everyone in Los Angeles to please join my office in our partnership with the Armenian General Benevolent Union, the AGBU, on Friday, October 9th, for a donation drive to the Armenia Fund. Please contact my office for additional information, and please stand in solidarity with the people of Armenia. And it is my privilege at this time to invite my colleague, Assemblymember Holden, for remarks.
Be sure to get the sides.
Good morning. I'm proud to be here to join with my colleagues, with my speaker, Anthony Rendon, Assemblymember Adrien Nazarian, who has shown and continues to show strong leadership in the state, providing clarity to not only the things that impact the state of California and the United States of America, but the world. I happen to represent Pasadena, home to a very large and strong Armenian community. I stand here today in solidarity with the people of Armenia and Artsakh. I stand here in solidarity with Armenians around the world. I stand here for peace, safety, and stability in the world. I also stand here in solidarity with my colleagues and call out the violent actions taken by both the governments of Azerbaijan and Turkey, and to call out the inability of our own government to play a just and constructive role to bring peace to the region. What we are witnessing in Artsakh is a continuation of the genocide against the Armenian people. We are seeing what happens when Turkey gets a free pass on their crimes against humanity. It is clear who the aggressors are and who are just trying to survive. Complacency by our country and leaders around the world sets a dangerous precedent and message to the world that we don't support free, independent, and democratic nations like Artsakh. This is the time to stand for what is right. Turkey, Azerbaijan, must end their aggression. The Trump administration and the international community must do its part to stop the violence against the Armenian people. And now it's my pleasure to call a good friend to speak, Councilmember David Root.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. and especially to Councilmember Paul Krikorian for calling this press conference. As it has been stated before, we are all standing here today in the defense of Artsakh and in the support of the Armenian people. We call for a ceasefire in the aggression backed by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and for the United States to support the Armenian people and confirm these and condemn and confirm these heinous attacks. Let us be clear. This is not a dispute over land. This is an attack on the Armenian people and the Armenian culture. When the people of Artsakh are facing today is unfortunately nothing new. A century ago, the Armenian genocide killed 1.5 million ethnic Armenians and traumatized the Armenian people for generations. This attempt at ethnic cleansing, led by the Ottoman government, reverberates in Turkey's aggression today. We must take this seriously, and we must speak out against the human rights violations and attacks being waged against Armenians. And we must seek consequences for the invasions led by Turkey and Azerbaijan. But we are calling out to the media to do its part too. Armenia and Artsakh stories are powerful. Their cultures matter, and they deserve our unequivocal support. This is not just some small conflict halfway across the globe. Los Angeles is home to more Armenians than anywhere outside of Armenia. So their fight is our fight. And I urge all Angelenos and all Americans who believe in self-determination and human rights to stand in solidarity with the Armenian brothers and sisters. Let us build peace and security for Artsakh and Armenia. Thank you. And now I'd like to call up Assemblymember Tom Lackey.
I would just like to say thank you to each one of you for being here to bring attention to such an overt set of circumstances and act of aggression that is so unjustifiable. I would like to echo the comments that have been stated before me and condemning these unjustifiable acts of aggression against the people in Artsakh. This is an outrage, and I would certainly ask those who have the authority and the power to stand up for Americans' values and to take action and to show our support for such a clear, unjustifiable act or actions as they continue to take place. I don't have a large number of Armenians in the district I represent, but what I do represent are the values of those in my district. And these actions are so condemnable that I felt obligated and feel very much appreciative to be invited here today to express my condemnation for these actions. And I would now like to bring up Assemblymember Bloom.
Good morning. I am here today in resolute support of the Republic of Artsakh and Armenia, whose citizens are facing violent aggression that has cost many, many lives. And together, we all call on the aggressors to stop, and stop now. And so, as others have done, I am calling for an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire in the region and a return to peaceful negotiations. It should be recognized that the entire region is becoming more and more destabilized as countries like Turkey and others see opportunity in a vacuum, in part left by the United States. The U.S. should be speaking out against this aggression, but appears to be completely disengaged on these issues, even though we are part of the Minsk group of countries that include Russia and France, who have traditionally been available to mediate disputes in the region. The Trump administration deliberately appointed a representative to the Minsk group and then failed to grant ambassador status to him, which puts that individual at a lower diplomatic rank than his French and Russian counterparts, thus giving the United States even less influence. On top of that, Secretary Pompeo, who has, with the president, has hollowed out the U.S. diplomatic corps and has made statements that indicate a U.S. abdication of authority in the region, suggesting that it should be left to the regional warring nations to sort out. And that makes resolution infinitely more difficult. So it is with the deepest concern that I strongly encourage those who are engaged in conflict to themselves implement a ceasefire before more lives are lost, and at the same time urge the United States to immediately reassert its role as a leading negotiator and mediator in the region, along with our partners, and bring this conflict to an end. I'd now like to introduce Councilmember Paul Koretz by Zoom.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you to my friend Paul Krikorian for holding this critical and timely press conference. On Sunday, September 27th, when the government of Azerbaijan made the initial incursion into Artsakh and began killing civilians, I immediately issued a statement condemning the Azeris and their hostile threat. Today, I reiterate that condemnation and add that the government of Turkey is actively complicit in these murders, as we all have recognized. This attack on women and children in Armenia and Artsakh is barbaric, it is disgraceful, it is abhorrent, and I am outraged at the actions of Azerbaijani forces, Turkish jihadist mercenaries, as are all of my colleagues here speaking today. The Armenian people have lived in peace as the first Christian nation for centuries. They have been persecuted, threatened by foreign aggressors, but they have always risen above their adversaries' attacks. This assault on humanity by Azerbaijan is not just in the faraway lands of Armenia and Artsakh. The ripples of hate are making waves the world over, and they must stop. In fact, this attack on the Armenians of Artsakh come on the heels of 3 significant hate crimes against the Armenian community in California, including one incident with shots fired into an Armenian school. Last week, Azerbaijan has breached Armenian sovereign territory, utilizing drones and aircraft, which continue to place Armenian and American civilians in Armenia in jeopardy. The missions the Azeris deploy over civilian neighborhoods, schools, and churches are just outrageous. There is no hiding that this is Turkey's flagrant attempt to continue what they started in 1915. The Turkish government has denied these atrocities for over 100 years. Now the effort at Armenian genocide is back, and we must fight now harder than ever to prevent it from continuing, to fight to recognize the genocide and to end it now. Azerbaijan and Turkey are clearly engaged in an attempt at ethnic cleansing again. In 2016, Armenian elderly villagers were murdered and had their ears cut off by Azeri forces as trophies to take back to their country. What could be more disgusting? I've always felt a kinship with the Armenian people as a Jew. We oppose genocide, and we say today, never again. We must call on the federal government and the United Nations to immediately intervene in order to save innocent lives. We can't do otherwise. The images of Armenian children hiding in rubble and sleeping on rocks as they avoid bombs and hide from Azeri forces is disheartening and heartbreaking. These atrocities being committed by Azerbaijan and Turkey are crimes against humanity, which strike at the very core of who we are as people. The American people, the people of Los Angeles, cannot stand by while this happens. We stand with the Armenian people and the Armenian diaspora, and we say, God bless Armenia and Artsakh.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Kretz, and thank you, colleagues, one and all. You stand here as the leaders of the state of California and the city of Los Angeles at the highest levels of government, and you stand here united with the Armenian people and with the people of Artsakh, and that message will be heard around the world. So I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today. Any questions? Apo.
Turkey, as a NATO member, has been accused by various independent observers for having violated NATO rules for acquiring US-made jet fighters and using them for aggression rather than defensive purposes. And secondly, Turkey has been accused for transferring US weaponry and NATO procured weapon to a third party, which is also prohibited from doing so. My question is directed to our Congressman Adam Schiff.
Well, this question goes to a host of actions by Turkey that are completely inconsistent with its obligations under NATO. Of course, for a NATO ally to be recruiting terrorists and foreign fighters from Syria to attack one of our allies, to try to spread that conflict and that poison is completely inconsistent with their NATO obligations. The use of any military aircraft, and that's an issue that is of grave concern, would also be a dire violation of its obligations under NATO. But these violations of their obligations under NATO didn't start with this conflict. It is part of a very disturbing trend in which Turkey has bought air defense systems from Russia that are incompatible with NATO, in which Turkey has intervened in Syria and endangered our forces in Syria, and in which Turkey has increasingly sidled up and cozied up to Iran. And I think, as President Macron recently said, this ought to force NATO to consider what kind of an ally Turkey really is and to reevaluate the relationship. This is why I say the United States needs to push back against Turkey and Erdogan right now. Armenia and Artsakh cannot do this alone. They need friends and allies. They need supporters of human rights. They need the United States. It's time for the administration to get off the fence and to confront Turkey and Erdogan and Aliyev and hold them responsible.
So just, I think I can answer that quickly, that we need the President of the United States to act to hold Turkey accountable. It's not the job of the California State Legislature. It's not the job of the City of Los Angeles. The President of the United States, if he can take a drive around and wave to his supporters, he can get on the phone and bring Erdogan to task for what he's doing. This is an obligation of President Trump to act against Turkey. Any other questions? I can't hear you. So I think that when you look at this group of leaders, and Assemblymember Nazarian particularly might want to comment on the state, I can tell you that the city of Los Angeles has been a strong leader in the recognition of Artsakh. We passed a resolution 6 years ago recognizing the independence of Artsakh. We established a friendship city relationship with Shushi, the cultural and spiritual heart of Artsakh, to connect this major city, one of the world's most important cities, with the tiny town of Shushi in Artsakh, to send the message of solidarity. In these chambers, in our city council chambers, we welcomed the president of the Republic of Artsakh as a head of state in this building in City Hall. So this city has a long, proud history of standing up side by side with the people of Artsakh and demanding justice and demanding independence and sovereignty for those people. And Assemblymember Nazarian, if you want to talk about the state's role as well.
I'm not going to touch anything. Okay. Thanks for the question, but the reality is that whatever we do below the federal level is symbolic. When we took the action of recognizing Artsakh, we actually took a step beyond what our function is. We don't want to get engaged as a state of California in foreign relations. That's not our responsibility. Our duty is primarily domestic. And so it took us beyond our provision of what we oversee and our discretion. But it was an act that was important to many of us in the legislature to show symbolic support. Having said that, what we were able to do last year, and everyone here voted in support of it, was pass a divestment bill that would force Turkey to take steps in recognizing the Armenian genocide. And if they were to continue not doing so, and if there were going to be federal sanctions put into place, then that could potentially trigger the California law on divesting funds from Turkish bonds, Turkish government bonds. That was not symbolic, but there are many triggers that go into actually making it take effect.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate your being here. Colleagues, again, thank you very much for this incredible show of solidarity. We all appreciate it very much. Thank you.